Hi, and welcome to the second module in Arbor Network, Becoming a Shepherd. And you're going to really enjoy this module because it's focusing on really the core ministry of leading God's people. So if I ask you the question, what does it mean to become a ministry leader? Maybe you automatically think of a particular role in the church, like the pastor or the elder, and that's good because a lot of the Bible does focus on that. And it's interesting what Peter says in First Peter 5, where he talks about becoming a shepherd. And he's speaking probably to the formal pastors and leaders of the church. But I want you to think about ministry leadership even in a broader term. So we're going to just briefly overview five roles of a ministry leader, both in like an office or as a function. Maybe God has not called you to be a pastor or elder, but your heart is burdened to lead God's people. I love what Peter says about shepherds. He says ministry leaders are responsible over God's people, but they must also be among God's people. And those are great prepositions. To be over God's people is the idea of leadership that God raises up in the spiritual gifts test of Romans 12, of 1 Corinthians 12. He talks about the gift of administration and leadership, and that is a spiritual leading. So maybe God has burdened you to be over, to lead in God's church. But he also uses the idea that we need to be among. In the old King James, he says in samples, the idea of an example, but from within, called out, so among God's people. So I want you to think about five ways that you and I can become a shepherd, whether you're a man, a woman, whether God's called you to an official role in a church, or you say, but that's just my ministry. Think, first of all, that ministry leaders must be elders. Now, I don't mean as an ordained elder in a sense. But I'm thinking more of in the Titus model, where he says both elder men are training younger men and elder women are training younger women. And you may fall in the category of the younger man, the younger woman today. And that's great. But ministry leadership means I must be able to become, not necessarily an age, but an elder man and an elder woman. And I don't want to put an age on that, but the idea is that this person has the character, the functional respect of leading God's people. What did Paul tell Timothy? Let no man despise the youth, but be thou an example. So this is not fixed on an age, but on more of the leadership roles within a church. And so the Greek word elder is used in one of two ways. First, it's synonymous with bishop, the idea of the formal presbytery, the leadership, but it's also used of men and women in the spiritual sense of spiritual leadership. So if God's burned you for leadership in his church, you're taking this module, think of yourself as God's asking me to be an elder, statesman, stateswoman, and somebody who can lead others. Secondly, ministry leadership is not only the idea of elder, but it's also the idea of bishop. And again, that word is used both as a title of an office, but also the idea of a function, oversight and administration. And maybe you have a gifting there, maybe you have a burden there. So the office of bishop is to oversee, but the function of bishoping is to administrate. And it's listed in Romans 12 and also in 1 Corinthians 12, 1 Corinthians 12, I believe. And it's not in the idea of the office, but in the idea of God gifts the church here. And so Acts 6 illustrates a beautiful working out of administration in the church, but to organize God's people, the idea of bishoping, oversight, and organization. Ministry leadership is it's eldering, it's bishoping. Ministry leaders, thirdly, they are deacons. Or you could even say deaconess is the idea of Phoebe. She was a servant of the church. And there's disagreement whether that was an official role. I don't, but she certainly did have that function. And the idea that ministry leadership is not just leadership, but it is also ministry. It is also ministry. The idea that we lead in ministry, we model ministry, we call others to ministry, and so we are deacons, we are servants of the church. Ministry leaders, probably most commonly, you would think of they are shepherds. They are pastors. And I remember speaking to one of the women in our church in South Africa. I said, "You're one of our best pastors." She said, "No, Pat, I'm not the pastor." I know that, but you are one of the best shepherds in our church. I watch how you gather others and help them provide safety and instruct them, especially our women in the church. You're a fantastic pastor to our women, a good shepherd. But number five, ministry leaders are also sheep. They're also sheep. The idea of being an example to the flock, that you are from not just over, but you also are among. So, for this module, becoming a shepherd, think about the burden God's put on your heart that in function and in role, I need to become an elder, the one who's able to lead. I need to become a bishop in a sense, at least that I can administrate and oversee. I need to always have the mind and heart of a deacon that I will wait on tables, I will serve. I need to be a pastor, the idea of shepherding, but I also must remember I'm always a sheep as well, willing to follow God and lead God's people. Welcome to Module 5. Welcome to Becoming a Shepherd.